city will be fine. Blowing up like...
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of This Is Ibrox, your Rangers podcast. And tonight I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by my fellow podder, Tommy McIntyre. Tommy, hello, good evening, how are you?
I am very well, thank you, Scott. Good evening to you both.
Special mention to Graham Falk, the sports journalist from the Scotsman, joins us tonight. Graham, first time on, debut, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. It's nice to be on, I suppose. It's been a while in coming, so pleased that you still wanted me after all this time.
Indeed, we'll go easy on you, ish.
I think should we not just put on the actual kind of YouTube output, we'll just put the words trialist.
Absolutely, that's right. That's exactly what we'll do.
Yeah, there we go.
So I think we have to lead with the Poznan game tonight. So we are recording this immediately after the Poznan game, and we have to say it's been a fantastic night for, selfishly ourselves, Rangers, but if you want to sort of take a bigger look at it for Scottish football, Rangers qualifying from that group as winners, playing against the quality of the opposition they've had. Tommy, it's a great night for the club, isn't it?
Fantastic night for the club, and it's you would generally say it's a culmination of the work that's been done by Steven Gerrard and the background management team and the board, etc. and all that. But actually we got into the knockout stages, last year as well. But to top a group with the likes of Benfica in it, can't be overstated. And the results that we've got, we've not sneaked it. We're unbeaten in the group. I mean, going away to Benfica, going away to, Portugal, and then going away to Poland, going away to Belgium with Standard Liège, who are not a bad side, no matter what anybody says, they're a very good side.
Yeah. And
then the manner of the victories and the performances as well. I mean, I think, and I may have tweeted this out on social media as well, that there's no better definition of progress under Steven Gerrard at the moment than, knockout stages, Rangers are seeded. That's the sexy part of the competition, where people start to get knocked out, and this is, you're back from the nightclub and the clothes start to come off. It all starts to get a bit interesting. This is where we are, and we're seeded in there. That's incredible progress, and Rangers can really play football. Great result. I won't wax lyrical because I know you guys want to jump in, but a fantastic result.
So Graham, I'm glad Tommy speaking tonight about just how well we're playing our football just now. I felt we could almost afford to make quite a few changes for this game tonight, which I think everyone largely expected Steven Gerrard to do. But special mentions in my eyes for guys like Zungu and Itten, because they've came in after not playing a lot of football but playing really, really well. But the one shining light, and it continues to be the case on a weekly basis, Glenn Kamara was like a different player tonight. What a player he is, he really is.
Yeah, he's absolutely superb. I mean, when you think how much you picked him up for as well, that was nothing. And he just fits into the way that Rangers want to play so well. And I think that's probably one of the big takes from tonight, is you've made, you could say, 5-6 changes, I think, from what would be your usual starting 11. And the style of play didn't change, the commitment didn't change, the ability to play the way that Gerrard evidently wants to play didn't change whatsoever, no matter that they had that many changes. And in a way, it was a breeze tonight, wasn't it? I mean, there was that one chance that they had at the beginning, but aside from that, can you ever really remember Rangers breaking a sweat and them having the chance? It was so simple. And a game like that, maybe a year and a half ago, would have probably been a bit of a banana skin, I think.
Yeah. Tommy, Graham rightly sort of picks up on the amount of changes we made. The one thing that impressed me was including Nathan Paterson coming in and playing, which I thought was really impressive for the young guy to get in there in the first instance. However, the guys that have came in slotted into the similar sort of mantra that we've been playing week in, week out, despite us having that rotation. So quality for quality is a statement I've used a couple of times this week. Regardless of who we're bringing in, they know the expectation on them, and they know the way that they're expected to play for the club.
Yeah, well, there's probably a coalescence of expectation and understanding in terms of the wider squad. So we've spoken about this before, that it's fine having a really good starting 11. What you need to be able to do to win the trophies, to win the championships, etc., is to be able to then turn to the bench or turn to your wider squad and say, right, not only do I want people who are, to Graham's point, which is well made, I want willing runners who go in with the right attitude, or to your point, Scott, of they understand, the nature of the tactics and their job, and they're disciplined. what you also, underpinning all that, they need to be talented enough to carry all that out.
Absolutely.
The Rangers have really made the greatest strides here is when you do look to the bench, and we've all got our favourites, and we've all got people we don't particularly like. Brandon Barker, if you're listening, I'm still coming for you. Right? It's absolutely fine, right? And I'm happy to be proven wrong by Brandon Barker at any point in time, right? But the fact of the matter is we can turn to the bench, we can make those 6 changes or whatever, we can bring in youth as well. Great to see 65 minutes from Nathan Paterson. But we can also replace with youth as well, Calvin Bassey, for example. But you can do that and there's no drop-off in the quality level. That's where you start to get the consistency that Steven Gerrard has been banging on about since day one, because we've always been able to perform under him, but it's performing consistently, getting the results in the bad moments, big players stepping up to deliver big moments in big games, walking away with 3 points. Just to touch very briefly, because a couple of players have been mentioned there. Steven Gerrard, I think I'm kind of trying to make a little bit of a leap here, but Steven Gerrard after the Ufa game away in Russia, Kampuchak or whatever region, I think it was, had spoken about that result relaunching Rangers, so to speak. And we got a couple of goals against Motherwell, but if you're looking for a performance that launched/relaunched Cedric Itten's Rangers career, played in his preferred position through the middle, dogged, determined, did the dirty work, aggressive in the challenge, took his goal really well. His running was fantastic, opening up the channels. That was a real forwards performance. I was delighted to see it. Delighted to see him getting a goal as well. Big performance and a big standout for me.
Graham, I think when Itten arrived at Ibrox, a lot of people said, and it's really unfair to brand players as, oh, he's a bit like him or he's a bit like that. I remember when he arrived, a lot of people said to me there was a lot of similarities between Itten's style of play and the big guy Dzeko that Man City had a couple of years ago. And initially when I seen that, I thought, that's a bit harsh because the guy's just in the door, literally just in the door. However, you can see where that comes from. I think I'm playing through the middle. He looked very handy tonight, but when he's been used previously and he's maybe been arriving from a wider position, you can see where that similarity is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad comparison to have to begin with, but it can do that thing where it creates pressure. And there's a couple of times I've seen him, and you don't want to judge anyone, too highly or too low. I think when you see people, and it's been difficult for him because, well, when we're talking about strength and depth, look at the centre forwards you could put through the middle. It's actually quite frightening. When you think the players that you've got there. I mean, you've got JD, didn't even get on the bench tonight, and you've got. Yes, he might be 38, but he's still pretty tidy for his age, isn't he? Yeah. But I think with Itten, I think what he did tonight with his performance is I think he probably just made people realise that comparisons like that are not that far-fetched.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you want. Yes, he came on, I think it was the Motherwell game where he scored, got a couple of goals there. Yeah. And he has shown flashes, but I think tonight, the first time he's had a real good run at it, he looked like he could be the kind of striker where we come back to it, no one wants anyone to get a big injury, and you've all got your key players. You obviously look over with Ryan Kent, Morelos, for me, Roof, but you do look at a performance at that tonight and you think, well, if one player did get a big injury, say Morelos, say Roof, and it was like a season ender, you could trust him. In previous years, you maybe couldn't, and I think that's the same across the park. I mean, how many clubs at the minute in Scotland and Europe, let alone just Scotland, could have an injury like their two main strikers and still field like a Swiss international that can score goals that he did tonight, Jermaine Defoe next to him if he needed to? Not many.
Tommy, I want to speak to you about Joe Aribo and Yanis Hagi, who both got some game time in their legs tonight. I would argue that both really need that. Aribo because he's been stop-start as far as his season's been concerned. However, Hagi because he has maybe dipped as far as consistency is concerned. Good for these guys to get the minutes into their legs. I thought Hagi played okay. He definitely misses that yard of pace. We saw that bit in the first half when he was clean through and he just didn't have that extra puff to sort of take himself in. Good to see these guys getting minutes, isn't it?
It absolutely is. He also took a poor first touch, if I recall correctly.
He definitely did.
He could have got away with his lack of pace if he'd taken a decent touch and got his body in front of the defender's run. But by not doing that, he allowed the defender to get round him. But you're absolutely right. He's a wee bit of the Gabriel Amatos about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And somebody's put a couple of weights in the back of his Yeah, you're absolutely right. Though your point's really well made. I agree with it in that. But it's an interesting kind of dynamic. Actually, just taking those two players, for example, that Joe Aribo came with some decent noises, but relatively unheralded, so to speak, right? But he turns out to be a really good player. And the words of Steven Gerrard, we need to go with him on Joe Aribo because he'll be a right bit frustrating. Not Ovie Ejaria frustrating or Shane Yojo frustrating nonetheless. But there's no doubt that he's I hate the term fans' favourite, right? Because that can go up and down moment to moment. But he's a good player and will do really well. I mean, eventually these Rangers will make money, right? And so he gets a bit of a buy, so to speak. Whereas there's Hagi tonight, who I think should get credited with the second goal because Goldson's header I don't think was over the line.
Yep.
But because of some of the expectation attached to his name and attached to previous performances, a lot's expected of him. I think he does suffer a little bit, and it's not working for him right now. Don't get me wrong, I'm not giving him a buy on that. Some things just aren't coming off. He keeps trying. Best luck to the guy. Great strike from outside the box as well. The keeper makes a kind of TV save for it tonight too against Poznan. But I think in some people's mind, and I maybe suffered from this at the beginning myself as well, so I'm critical here myself, is that because of his previous performances, because of his name a little bit, because of how highly he is rated, because of maybe that Braga performance and stuff like that as well, he's expected to do something every single game, but not just something like tap that one over the line, something that's memorable, that you walk away going, oh, did you see that Hagi beat four guys on the halfway line and then rolled it back and came our roof. And so I think there's just a wee bit of expectation, but you're absolutely right. Stop-start for both of them. And certainly in terms of the flourish and who's got the more confidence, you would think it's Aribo. Hagi's in a wee bit of a bad place right now. It's just not coming off for the boy.
Graham, from a European perspective, this campaign has been absolutely tremendous. I remember when the draw was made and the teams came out, Liège, Poznan, Benfica. And I remember saying on this pod just shortly before game one that I felt we could win the group. And I don't know if it was a bit of bravado.
Definitely bravado.
It probably was bravado, Thomas. Yes,
crystal ball me on that one, you.
It probably was. No, it definitely was bravado. But I was confident that we could qualify from the group because Steven Gerrard has had us playing such a decent brand of football, and the campaigns previously have been good enough to warrant us sort of claiming that. I don't think that European football really expected Rangers to play as well as they did for the duration of the campaign and now go into the next round, Monday's draw, as a seeded club.
Yeah, when you look at like the season, the campaign, in general, you look at the money Benfica has spent in the summer as well. It's not just Benfica that are Benfica. You're not just going like, big name, big side. They've done so like this and that and the other in their own league. They've spent a lot of money as well. Like, and I know money doesn't always equate to success, as we've seen many times, but they're not exactly struggling, are they? And we're talking about like Rangers, winning the group and going in as seeded and so on and so forth. But I think it shows an awful lot about not just how far we've come, but how good we've played, is the fact that we're actually probably a little bit disappointed if you go back a couple of weeks ago that we haven't done that Benfica side that has spent that much money twice. Yes, I know one time was against 10 men, fair enough, but the home game was frustrating that we'd let those goals drop near the end. But I think, and it's all ifs and buts, right? It is very much ifs and buts, and football's not like that. The results were both draws, but if for like a couple of minutes here or there, one bit of luck, maybe it hitting the post and not going in, we wouldn't have just won the group, we would have won it at a canter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're talking about Benfica being a strong side. Yeah, maybe Poznan aren't the strongest and you'd expect to beat them, but it's not a poor group. You don't look at it and go, oh God, but at the same time you don't look at it and go, oh yeah, we'll absolutely wipe the floor with that. You can be confident we'd get out of it. The truth is, for a couple of last minute goals or late goals, we would have got out of this group a couple of weeks ago as winners of the group and won it at a canter.
Absolutely. Tommy, the group has been quite an eye-opener. It's been exciting to watch, albeit we're doing it from home in our armchairs, of course, but there's no question that being a supporter and being at Ibrox for each of these three games particularly the Benfica game, I think would have been superb for us to be sitting there at our chairs, just taking it all in.
Definitely, I miss my seat at the stadium, I have to say. But at home, it's a chaise lounge for me, not an armchair as one would expect. With somebody feeding me grapes that I've flown in, socially distanced grapes, you understand. But yeah, I mean, it's been great to have been in the stadium. I miss it. I miss meeting the guys for a beer. I miss having a chat. You know, I think we all do, right? And that's not to exclude those people who aren't lucky enough to have season tickets, you know. But I certainly miss going to the games and everything that's wrapped up with that social aspect as well, because that's half the battle sometimes. Just go back to the group, because it's just worth saying as well, and you guys have touched on it quite rightly, but there's no barometer that you can take or would be willing to take that doesn't show Rangers' performance in a really, really, really good light. From the football we've played on the park to the way that the leagues of these teams are funded as well. So I was thinking very quickly whilst you guys were talking there. Money's not the be all and end all, as Graham was saying. You know, money's not a barometer of success and all that. But we hark on a lot about how small Scotland is sometimes and the lack of a big TV deal. I think we sit 19th in the European League of TV deals. Yeah. And you've got Poland at 15th. So there's Lech Poznań, second in the last season. And then you've got 10th Belgium in terms of TV revenue. And then you've got 9th Portugal. So these clubs are in bigger leagues, earning more money, being able to splash the cash really big, Benfica being the barometer in this particular example. And yet, I've touched on this previously, and this is why I make the point, it's a long way around the barn, but for Rangers in a pretty constrained market in Scotland, have been able, through quality coaching, quality analysis behind the scenes, and a bit of star power as well, the fact that we're a big club and you get Steven Gerrard, to be able to put together a team on a relatively small budget that consistently, not one-off, consistently goes toe-to-toe with these teams. And that's 2 years in a row into the knockout stages. Yes, I know it's not Champions League. Fair enough, horses for courses. But that is a really, really, really big piece of progress there. And I know we're talking about it, but I sometimes think that we're just as a support, becoming a wee bit used to it. Yeah. This is a seismic shift from where we were. And it's huge. It's always worth labelling the point.
It's good to hear the word punching and think that people aren't talking about myself.
Keep the underneath this on YouTube, please.
Graham, how do you think Steven Gerrard and his backroom staff will now look at the Europa League campaign moving forward? We're streaking away in the league just now. Everyone can see how comfortable we are there, although we have the awareness of there's still games in hand. We now have a situation where we're going hell for leather in two big tournaments. Progression in the Europa League, and we've spoken about this in the podcast before, and I know exactly what Tommy's going to say, but it would be good to get your opinion on it. At what point does the Europa League and the existing progress in their domestic championship, do they overtake one another, or do we try and keep them as an equilibrium?
I think Gerrard will, and his coaching staff will probably be looking at it where there's no preferential treatment. I mean, I know he never won the Premier League with Liverpool as a player, but there's no doubt you can't look at Steven Gerrard and not say as a personality and as a person he's not a winner. So I personally don't think he'll be. I think he changed the team tonight because he could. I think that's probably confidence in that. If the team, did finish second in the group, he still feels confident going into the next round that he's got a first team and substitutes in a squad that could still get through the next round. I think as a fan, and maybe people are different, I think would probably prefer to win the league at this point. So I think as fans, we probably want that. And if Celtic fans are to be believed, we've won that apparently, the way things are down there at the moment. But indeed, as we know, there's still games to go. But I think Gerrard will be looking at both. I spoke to my girlfriend tonight when watching the game, and she says, who do you want in the next round? And I openly and honestly said, not that we could beat anyone, but I don't fear anyone. And if I don't, I certainly don't think Steven Gerrard would. So I think, I don't think he's stupid. I think if it gets to a point where the games are coming thick and fast and the players are looking a bit weary and maybe we get a draw against, I don't know, say a Hamilton or a Motherwell or something along the way, he might say, I need to I need to manage my squad a little bit if we're still in both competitions. But I think where he is at the moment, he's probably looking at it and going, why not go for both? There's not necessarily anyone that I would fear in Europe. And I think you've got that much of a squad now as well that you could rotate, maybe not as much as you have tonight, maybe change one or two and still progress quite a lot. I mean, he's kind of doing it a little bit now as well with obviously the Jermain Defoe situation with him not playing him in Europe, but then bringing him on in the league. And I suppose that's his way of trying to juggle both. But I think the way that Gerrard is and his mindset and probably his coaching staff's mindset is, let's go hell for leather in both until something on the pitch tells us that I need to change something or do otherwise.
Tommy, we could be looking at a really exciting 6 months for the football club.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a really good moment. That said, nothing's won yet. Not entirely, convinced and not a pointed comment to either of you gentlemen, but you see some things on social media, for example, where people are saying that we've already won the league and stuff like that. That's nonsense. That's patent nonsense.
Yeah.
And we've still got a Betfred Cup final. Big barometer again. Big example. We had a bad experience in that last year. We need to go there. We need to get the first trophy under the belt of the Gerrard era. Then you kick on. To answer your question, as you well know, Scott, anything that interferes with winning the league, I am not interested in it. Full stop. Although I do agree with Graham's point that the management team will be taking it, and I think the players are parroting this virtually every week. One game at a time, one game at a time, one game at a time. The only thing I'm really interested in when it comes to the the draw and stuff like that is, not the only thing I'm interested in, but I'd be really, really hopeful. My fingers are as crossed as they can get with me for a draw that we don't have to travel to, short haul flight type of scenario, or a down south job, purely for the jet lag and the issues with COVID-19 and having to do those protocols. So if we can stay relatively short on that, I'm happy. But yeah, as always, no change from me. League. But yeah, listen, if you came to me and you said treble and get really far in the Europa League, hey, I'm not going to knock it back. It's Christmas time after all.
So, Graham, I've spoke to an ex-Rangers captain this week, and he spoke quite passionately about how fit the guys are, the squad are, how lean they are, and if we're going to be competing in 4 different competitions between now and May, that's going to be vitally important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're in a certain amount of competitions, and if you play in every game across every competition, you're pushing 50, 55, 60 games potentially. It's quite a lot. And I especially think in this season as well, there's probably got to be a bigger focus on fitness as well, because I mean, I've been lucky enough to be to like a couple of games this season, not Rangers ones particularly, but like around the UK and stuff like that. A couple of Rangers women's games and a couple of games down south in England cover, and it's exhausting just reporting on it because of the stuff that you have to go through. I mean, it's not just like, as a player, I can imagine that takes up so much of your day and getting tested and all that kind of stuff as well. So that adds on a little bit of like, to go with it as well. So I think, fitness, from my experience, has always been quite good mentally, and I think if you're in like tip-top shape, you do feel good mentally, and if you win in games, that's just adding on top of it as well. But I think that will be probably one of his primary concerns. I think Gerrard will be used to, as a player, what it's like to play that amount of games, because although, like I said before, he never won the league with Liverpool, a lot of the time they were further in the Champions League competition, sometimes winning it, further in the League Cup, further in the FA Cup. He'll be aware of what it takes to be in the best condition to play, and he'll be able to spot if that person can't play the 55 to 60 games per season or whatever it may be. In a way, I know there's been question marks on him in the past, but I've always said, for a player's welfare especially, and with stuff like this, it's difficult to get someone who's in a better position than Steven Gerrard to understand, especially like the fitness side and the mental side of the game in the current era, I think, especially.
Guys, great insight into the Europa League campaign as it's now finished, and what we can hopefully look forward to. Tommy, I want to come to you now on something that happened last week. Dave King agreed with Club1872 to sell his shareholding to allow them to become the largest shareholder in the club over a period of time. I believe it's the next 3 years. We're hoping to get someone on from Club 72 over the next sort of period of time, just to give our viewers and listeners an insight into the thought process behind that. What's your take on what we do know indeed so far, Thomas?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. So I won't go into any massive depth or detail, because there are other things we've spoken about, and as you say, Club 1872 are very keen to come on and speak to us and speak to fans, as one would expect from a fans organisation. But essentially, at its heart, Dave King's always laid out the fact that he was in it reluctantly, and fair play to him on that. He still stepped up. And you're right on so he now wants to shed his shares, and some of that is because, and it was quite telling, he was saying, well, listen, my kids are South African natives. They are not Rangers affiliated. They don't have a love for the club, and I'm worried that they're going to sell them. If I call my clogs, for want of a better way of putting it, which is very open of him, right? Dave King's very good at spinning some of those stories as well. It's one of his strengths.
Yeah.
So he wants to make sure that they pass on in a kind of legacy capacity back into people who are Rangers minded, right? In italics. Not a phrase that I'm massively a fan of either, it has to be said. And not just some other fly-by-night carpetbagger who comes along and says, well, I've got a big checkbook. There we go. So as you said, 3 years Club 1872 have to complete the deal, and I think it's in total 13 million to buy the shares. Now that's 3 years, and there's some punitive isn't the right word, but the cost of the shares goes up every year. So you don't have to wait for the 3 years. And I know there's a big legacy drive from Club 1872 at the moment. They can complete the deal really early, and so that's why they're trying to do it within the first year. So I think in the first year the shares would cost 20 pence per share, and then in the second year it'd be 23 pence per share, and then in the third year you'd be looking at 26 pence per share. So 20, 23, 26 on average over the 3 years. That's 23 pence per share on average, right? Quick calculation there. And I generally did manage to do that in my head, so I'm wildly impressed. Right? It's probably wildly wrong, right? And that's actually below the average that Dave King purchased them at. So on average, all his purchases together was 23.7%, 23.7 pence, right? So no matter what happens, he's taking a bit of a kicking on this for us, for the fans, right?
Yeah.
Now, some people would say, some naysayers, why don't you just give the money to the club? Why don't you just gift them? Why don't you just put 13 million in? Well, I think he's got a legitimate way to transact his own business here. He's not screwing anybody over.
Absolutely.
So just to bookend that, the big things, I've thrown a lot of numbers out, but that's a little bit of the background to why that's looking like that, and why Club 1872 are so keen to get people in the door really quickly. It's because it means the best share price for them, and therefore for us. And they're looking at, I think it's £500 up front, and then a £10 per month legacy, or £50 per month for 10 months, and then £10 per month, or £20 per month for 25 months, and then £10 a month thereafter. You can go to their website and have a look at some of the detail around about that. The only other overriding thing that I would take from it is that you have to remember, for want of a better analogy here, this is the upfront cost. So you make the kid, you have to feed the kid, right? Pretty simple, right? And so therefore, this 13 million is the purchasing of that share block. That means, as I think it would make us the single largest shareholders, Club 1872, that is, if it goes through. Therefore, when funding is needed, if it's needed, you're going to have to pour more money in. So therefore, Club 1872 would quite rightly turn to its members or do something else in legacy. It's not a one-off perspective.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to do that and more shares are issued, then the share capacity you hold would be diluted. Now, none of that's a bad story. I'm just making it very clear there that it's not 13 million up front and everything's good. There is, as with any business, an expectation that your big shareholders would be able to pump in more money, which is where Club 1872 will have to maintain their membership, maintain their income, maintain the relationships with the fans. And I don't think it's any bad thing to say that historically, Club 1872's relationship with the fans hasn't always been transparent, clear, and of the greatest. But I know the guys behind the scenes are making great strides and great efforts to bridge that gap. There we are.
Graham, it's a huge feather in Club 1872's cap that Dave King has went to them in the first instance for this deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's, for me, and obviously there's a lot of ins and outs and there's lots of different opinions on it, but I don't think there can never really be a bad thing with any kind of fan ownership in any way, shape, size, or form, be that 1% or 100%. I mean, there's another club that I follow that unfortunately fell into the wrong hands, in my opinion. And there's certain people that have 6% and stuff like that, and people have talked about, potentially buying that 6%, and those people will not look at that happening, as far as I'm aware. And there's a reason for that. So I think the fact that he has turned to them as well, and it's huge. Why them? Obviously, there's reasons behind it why he's chosen them, and that's definitely a feather in the cap, 100%. I think, but the big thing for me is, I think fan ownership, like I say, be it 1%, be it 100%, is massive. Letting the fans have an actual say in the club, like officially in any way, shape, size, or form, no matter how big or really, really small that may be, is huge. And I think that can only be a positive, because fans, in my opinion, it's maybe a bit different in the UK to maybe somewhere like Spain or say Germany. But I think fans, it should be more of a regular thing. So for me, it's definitely a good thing.
Indeed. And as I would say again, as I sort of opened with, we do hope to get someone from Club 1872 on the podcast, even as a special, hopefully over the next couple of weeks, and we can sort of refresh things for our viewers and listeners. Graham, I'm going to come straight back to you. Last weekend we saw Jermain Defoe make his 800th appearance in league football, British football if you like, and you've alluded to the fact that you have a second love, I think it's fair to say, and that is Sunderland Football Club. Jermain obviously has an allegiance there from previous years. It's incredible that he's managed 800 games, and a huge testament to how he's looked after himself over his career.
I mean, I remember when JD first went to Rangers, and I think you would have been, 35, I think, at that point.
About that.
And before I did the job that I did, I used to work in a call centre, and as you can imagine, the call centre is full of football fans of both sides. And the Rangers fans, don't know why, seem to like me a little bit more than the Celtic fans did.
If you wore that top, it would have worked.
Probably the fact that I wore royal blue a little bit too often, yeah. But they asked me about Jermaine Defoe, and went, can we get a season out of him? And I says, nah, you'll get like 3 or 4 seasons out of JD, no problem at all. It's no secret that Jermaine Defoe is held in really, really high esteem at Sunderland. And I think a lot of people look at the relationship he had with Bradley, and that's huge. But also sticking in a volley from 30 yards out against your biggest rivals pretty much gets you in the legendary status. But you know what it is with Jermaine Defoe, to be honest with you, he could have been not the man he was, and he's obviously a very nice man. But say he wasn't, say he was the complete polar opposite, I think his style of play, the way that he was on the pitch, would have probably earned him that hero status at Sunderland anyway. So when he went to Bournemouth, I'm not going to lie, that broke my heart a little bit. So the fact that he ended up back at Rangers within a couple of seasons was perfect for me. I like to think that was my Jedi mind trick, bringing him back. But honestly, with Jermaine Defoe, I think it really wouldn't surprise me. And I think Gerrard said something to this effect. It wouldn't surprise me if he was still playing when he's 44, 45. I watched Teddy Sheringham play when he was 42, 43 at West Ham. Jermaine Defoe is 10 times more in shape than Teddy Sheringham was at that age. He's just, you can't take it. I mean, his finish, he was on the pitch, 7-8 minutes?
Yep.
One chance. And I think the commentator said something along the line. I think it was Ian Crocker, actually. I love Ian, so it's not a criticism. I'm a really big fan of Ian. But he said, Morelos has not had that chance today, and he's gone off, and typically it's felt to Defoe. That chance didn't fall to Jermaine Defoe. Jermaine Defoe was in that place to receive that chance. And absolutely. That's why Jermaine Defoe could play forevermore. For me, I'm very, very biased. I would play him every single week until he's like 75 because I love him. But I think you could get a lot more work out of him. He's not going to be looking to retire anytime soon, not at all.
Tommy, the importance of someone like Jermaine Defoe is, as far as his professionalism and just how good a guy is, I think, as Graham quite rightly suggests, the importance of him in and around the team, albeit he's not playing every week, over the next couple of months could be critically important to how successful we are between now and May.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, you take it in, let's say, component parts. You've got the fact he will come in and he comes in cold, but he can still get goals because his movement, as Graham was saying there, is phenomenal. The ball doesn't drop to Jermaine Defoe. Jermaine Defoe makes sure the ball gets to him. It's slightly different, you know. And then, like you say, I think probably if I just tweak your question just ever so slightly,
Of course.
in that I think it's, considering it's still a relatively young squad, and it's, like I said before, I don't want to sound overly negative, it's 1-0, right? But plaudits, right? You can't spend plaudits at the bank, right? And you don't buff them to a shine in your later years, right?
Yeah.
It's his reaction as a senior player who's been there and done it. His reaction round about the dressing room to not getting picked consistently is probably the big thing. Being in there every day, saying, no bother, Gaffer, I know I need to work hard, I'll be ready when you call upon me. Not, I expect to be called upon all the time. And then being in the gym, being a touchstone for the younger players, taking part in the academy stuff where he does the Zoom lectures and stuff like that, which we've seen recently. Those are the component parts where you say, there's Jermaine Defoe not getting a game. And I'm such and such in the squad, whatever. And he's not making it. He's, no bother, boss, I'll be ready, I'll get my chance and I'll come on and score. Maybe I should shut my mouth up. There's a wee bit of, healthy tension there that keeps squad harmony moving in the right direction. And if you've got senior players acting like that, people start to look up to them as well, and all of a sudden you keep a lot of that noise down when people aren't getting regular game time. I think that's really the important part of that.
That was a big thing with Jermaine at Sunderland as well. His last season was our last season in the Premiership when we had Josh Maja and Joe Lasora coming through. Less said on Joe Lasora the better, because it hasn't really worked out and nullifies my point. But Josh Maja kind of got in the team towards the back end of the Championship season when we were absolutely guff, for want of a better word. But during that kind of period when Jermaine Defoe was there, I think there was a video on YouTube and stuff like that, and he took Maja and Asora under his wing. And within a year, Asora actually went to Swansea for $2 million. It hasn't really worked out for him, but he's still a young boy, if I'm honest. Josh Maja is now playing in the French top division.
French, someone, yeah, absolutely, aye. 7
or 8 goals, and there was little bits of Jermaine Defoe in him, and it was League One's very different to the Scottish Premiership. Trust me, it's horrendous. But like the way he dropped his shoulder and just be in the right place, and you were just like, he's actually spent time with that kid. And Josh Maja was a totally different player, it seemed. I know a few of the media guys at Rangers as well, and obviously, as you can tell, I'm a very passionate Jermaine Defoe fan. And I'm not lucky enough to have come across him man to man yet, but I asked a few of the media guys at Rangers, like, what's he like? And she said, what it is with Jermaine Defoe is when he walks in a room, everyone kind of just goes, okay,
it's Jermaine Defoe.
Yeah. It's kind of like he just has, she said he has this aura about him where people are just like instantly respecting him. And not that they don't do that with other players across the board, but Jermaine Defoe, because of his accomplishments in the game, the way he's carried himself and the person that he seems to be within a football club, he seemed to have gained respect to Tottenham, West Ham, Bournemouth, Sunderland, Rangers. And I think it speaks volumes from him. And I totally agree with what Tommy said. Having him in the squad and saying, all right, cool, I'm not in the squad. What do I need to do? I'll keep working hard. At 38 years old, when he's played 800 appearances across, numerous big clubs. Yeah. It just speaks volumes for the man and what he can bring to your squad. And he's I think, probably more essential. Just as essential off the pitch as he is on, exactly what Tommy said.
Tommy, I'd argue that in 10, 15 years down the line, and you look at guys like Morelos, Itten and Kemar Roofe will look back on their time playing at Rangers with Jermaine Defoe as critically important times in their career. I look at Morelos and Itten in particular because they're that little bit younger. They cannot fail to have learned a huge amount from him since he arrived at Ibrox.
It goes without saying, yeah, it's a well stated point. If you're in and around about, no matter what your industry, what your specialism, what your job is, whatever, right? Whether you're a sportsman, sportswoman, whatever. If you don't pick up tips or go out your way to seek learning moments or whatever from people who are better at it than you, right? And let's be quite clear, Itten, decent player, Morelos, decent player, Roofe, decent player, best finisher at the club is Jermaine Defoe, right? Full stop. Now, I'm not saying that he's better at everything than those players, right? Alfredo's more handful and all that kind of stuff, right? But if you're not looking every single day and picking up the wee tricks of his movement in the box, right? And that's probably one thing I haven't mentioned there. Not only is he the best finisher, he's got the best movement in the box of all 4 of them as well.
Yeah.
Then if you're not picking up from that, there's something wrong with you as a professional. You get in there and you bleed his brain dry, or you just watch him and you see how he moves defenders. But I agree with you. They should look back on it and say, that was a great learning experience for me in a team for all the reasons we've touched there. You know, the way you comport yourself, how to maintain your body, how to maintain your sharpness, but also just how to actually do your job.
So we come back to the bread and butter this weekend, and listen, I can't lie, it's always nice to have a trip back up to Tannadice, Thomas, which I'm sure you agree with. It's particularly nice to go up there and see that they're absolutely decimated and have little or no players, I think, ready to come up against us. We're going up there, and I think by all things considered, we'll be playing a youth side. They're still losing out on these 9 players to COVID, which of course we, all joking aside, we hope that all is well there and there's no one that actually has this awful disease. From a football perspective, we will want to go up there and get the 3 points in the bag fairly early doors on Sunday, and then look forward to the next game.
Absolutely. You know, and I echo your sentiments. You know, it's nice to make jokes and all that, but COVID-19 is a killer. Yeah. And we hope that, you know, by and large, you know, nobody is seriously affected and everybody recovers well. But as far as Dun United are concerned, like, you know, City of Discovery, or what we discovered, it's still awful, right? Let's get back down the road, right? And with limited apologies to my friends in Dundee.
Hello, Dundee.
yeah. Very limited apologies to them, by the way. If it's okay, none of them own computers, so it's or electricity. But yeah. Without digging myself any further holes, because I think I need to go to Dundee in the next couple of months.
Good luck with that. Get it on video.
But that's it. You know, burn the witch type of scenario as they chase any pitchforks and burning brands. But you're absolutely right in that they're in a bad moment.
Yeah.
They've got a reasonably youthful squad as it is anyway, and then you take out some of the key components due to the COVID-19 issues there. You're thinking that we're going to go up and, you know, give them a doing over, you know, with a nod to the fact that we're flying back from Poland, resting probably some of the squad, a little bit more rotation as well. Will it go back to full strength? Maybe. We'll see what that looks like. Should we win? Yes, that's a tick in the box. Is it always nice to slap about Dundee United? Double tick, because it absolutely is. And that's it. It goes to my default. Get the 3 points, no injuries, get back down the road, making sure you follow the average speed cameras on the way down the motorway.
Absolutely.
That's the 3 important things to play in Dundee United. That's it.
Graham, I think ultimately from a Rangers perspective, we're coming up to a stage of the season where historically we have put the brakes on a little bit for one reason or another. We don't have the winter break this season, so it will be a case of just continuous football. And in that same manner, you have to hope that the players just continue to look at 3 points.
I think that's the fact that there isn't a break. If you look at the past few seasons, is probably a benefit. I don't know, from the players probably won't think this way. They'll think, you know, break or no break, we can still go on and win this league. But I think as fans, based on what's happened, you'd probably want to keep ploughing on with the form that we have. But you know, sometimes confidence is a big thing, and I know that it would be a big surprise based on the players that they've got out, the fact that we should go there and win. But there's going to be a point, I honestly think, at some point in the season where we do lose a game, and the later the better. You don't want to be going to somewhere like Dundee United and drawing, say, 1-1 or getting nicked 1-0, and it's a big shock result. The one thing that probably would be, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, really. Obviously, they're missing so many players, but I was reading the other day, I think Dundee, of the sides in the Scottish Premiership, are the third worst, I think, if it touches inside the box. I was reading a bit about Shankland and stuff like that, and a lot of people are saying, like, Shankland this, Shankland that. They're not really giving them that many chances in the box, but the fact that half of those players that normally play for them, well, more than half, are missing, could you get a bunch of, like, young, exuberant youth players that just want to kind of go straight at you? You never know. It could be a potential banana skin in almost like a cup tie when you come up against lads that will never get a chance against, you know, a Rangers or players that they're playing against, and they really want to make their mark. So it could be a negative in a way, but in reality, the way that Rangers are playing, the players that they've got out, the amount of players that they've got out, as Tommy said, it should be a couple of early goals, put it to bed, game management, maybe rest one or two players in the last 20, last 30, get back up the road with the 3 points. That's what it should be. But football is never as simple as that.
Here. Graham, before I'll let you go for this week, and I'd say now I'd be keen to get you on in the not too distant future. We'll certainly have you on again. I'm aware you do a podcast of your own. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm very lucky that my name is Falk, because it presents me to call it What the Falk, which is obviously a fantastic play on words, which was thankfully just presented itself to me, which not everyone has that luck. But yeah, I mean, predominantly I'm Sunderland and Rangers. I know some people don't like the two-team thing. I don't really care. That's what I am, and that's how it is. But I do a little bit on Sunderland recently because of change in management. But it's mainly, old previous former players going through their career. I've had a couple of, more than just a couple of Scottish Premiership players on. I've had Chris Burke on as I think third episode. So it's a little bit back in the day. It was very much at the start of lockdown. He talks about obviously Arthur Newman and coming through a little bit what we were talking about before, Jermaine Defoe, learning from the likes of, Arthur Newman, Arveladze as it was and stuff at the time. So hopefully if you've enjoyed my little mini rants here that you've allowed me to have, Scott, now and again in this one, hopefully people enjoy that. And it's on Spotify, Apple, YouTube and other stuff. Wherever you listen to your podcast is probably there. If it's not, it probably won't be. So I'm sorry in advance.
Good. Thank you. Listen, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you coming on this week.
Thanks for inviting me. It's always good.
Thomas, always good to see your coupon on the telly. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much, Graham. An absolute pleasure as well. And I would recommend listeners to go and check out Graham's podcast. I've listened to it myself, so I say it firsthand.
So this week's podcast will be across all the obvious places for ourselves: YouTube, Stitcher, Podbean, Acast, Apple Music. Tommy, is there any more? I'm not sure.
I don't know. Maybe. Well, I don't know.
The internet.
It's on the internet, yeah.
Downloadatron, Bit, Pirate Bay, LimeWire, I don't know, Mobius, all those old ones. There we go.
Is the Abacus one? No. Before we embarrass ourselves any further, good luck to Rangers on Sunday when they travel to Tannadice. Huge congratulations to the team and everyone associated with the team in their qualification from the Europa League group tonight. We will do this all again next week, myself and Tommy and a couple of others potentially. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching.
Fire's raging.